All right, everybody, welcome back to another little excerpt from Sasquatch Society. Now, I haven't used this clip before, but it's a little interview that I have talking to a couple of members of the Orr family. That's the family that I met along the Appalachian Trail when we hiked last year, and I went and visited them when I was doing the Bigfoot conference in Texas and doing some investigations around Falk and stuff this last October. And we looked around the property a little bit, and they own a little bit of farmland out in the Hillsborough area and Burleson area in Texas. And we had a little short conversation, and I'm just going to add this. This hasn't been on any episodes yet, but it might show up in a future episode of Sasquatch Society once we get more fluent with uploading our podcasts and stuff. But it's a good little conversation about the idea of Bigfoot on private property, and some information about their farm and some different things to kind of give an idea and paint the picture of how vast a lot of owned property can still be. So here's a little bit of a conversation with Bruce and Kevin Orr. All right. Welcome back for another episode of Sasquatch Society, the Bigfoot podcast for enthusiasts. I'm your host, Ron Reed, and today I'm sitting down with a couple of real good friends of mine, Mr. Bruce Orr and his son, Kevin Orr, and I met them while walking the Appalachian Trail last year. And we're outside on the porch with their cats and dogs, and it's a nice fall day. And we're out here. We're going to talk a little bit about some of their farm property. Mr. Orr has some property that's been in the family for quite some time. We're going to talk about how Kevin and I went out there and we're looking for different types of wildlife, and I think that it's important to bring the farmer's perspective on things when we're talking about Bigfoot, because like hunters, like fishermen, like hikers, they spend a lot of time outdoors. So we're going to talk about some of their opinions and feelings about Bigfoot towards the end there. But without putting it off too much longer, tell me about yourselves a little bit and tell me about the farm.
Well, I'm 57, and we have this family farm that my parents lived on. My dad was born and died there. My grandparents lived there their entire life. They're born and died there. And my grandparents built the house on it and died there as well. We've had that farm since about 1870. And it's about 500 acres, partially cultivated, and there's some woods and a nice creek. It's well below the surface of the land. And it's pretty secluded out there. It's just a fun place to go on the weekend and go walk around and hunt hogs and go four-wheeling.
Yeah. I noticed when we were out there, we were out there looking around, and there's a lot of different food sources I've noticed just for people and animals. There's a lot of pecan trees, and what other fruit trees do you have out there?
We have some peach trees and persimmon trees. Of course, the pecan trees are out there. Pear tree. Of course, out in the field, we grow wheat and corn.
Mm-hmm.
So there's hundreds of acres of when the corn's harvested, there's a lot of corn left on the ground too. So those are the food sources.
Right.
In addition, there's like the board arc trees with I guess the horse apples.
Yeah,
well,
yeah, and then even the mesquite, I think, have like a long fruit thing. I think mesquite trees have these types of, similar to like a pawpaw plant, which is kind of like a long thing with little seed pods. Yeah, they shape like a pea. Yeah, like a pea pod.
I try to kill as many of those as I can.
Yeah, they're not fun to walk through. Me and Kevin definitely had fun with some of that later when we were deploying a couple of trail cameras. So Tell me about the farmhouse and kind of how that came about and some of the history with the land prior to your family in owning it.
Well, the farmhouse, it's the second house that was built on the land by our family, and it was started in 1899, and they finished it in the year 1900. And it's about 3,200 square feet. It's got an upstairs and a downstairs, and it's built out of cypress, so it doesn't rot. And it was renovated by my parents in about 1986. We put all new wiring and plumbing and fixtures, and it made it very livable. But it's a very quiet place where there's not a house within a mile of the place, and it's an enjoyable place, very secluded, where no one can, if you want to shoot, no one can even hear the gunshot.
That was a good thing too, because later me and Kevin went out and we were making some loud noises trying to see if we can get any responses. We were playing Coyote howls, and then just for the sake of fun, I guess I attempted a few Bigfoot howls, but we never heard anything back from coyotes or anything. It was kind of a quiet night, but we did have some interesting stuff show up on our trail cameras. Kevin, do you want to talk about our overnight stay there and kind of how we toured the property and kind of went in there and explored a little bit?
Sure, yeah. We went out, what was it, about a week ago?
Yeah,
Four days
about
to
a week
ago.
to a day. Yeah.
And we spent the night in the farmhouse, and we drove out with four-wheelers and Ron, your truck.
Yeah.
And we went out walking down the creek there, and there was obviously lots of signs of animals and like bedding.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, there seemed to be a lot of flooding that was happening and erosion.
Yeah, we were noticing like stuff like that was about 3.5 feet off the ground in some locations.
Find some brush in the trees.
Yeah. Stuff had been flowing through, and yeah, I didn't expect that because the creek looks really small and kind of restricted, but apparently that water level had to get up, several feet from the bank. You guys must have had some monster rain. Like, when did you have? I know that there was some flooding in Texas, not too long ago. What was that like? This year in 2016, or was that at some point last year?
I think it was last year.
Last year, yeah.
While we were on the trail.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of rain in 2015. I remember we had a rainy year to hike the trail, which is another thing that we can have another talk about in the future. Because we did walk most of not most of it, but we walked several large portions of the Appalachian Trail together. I think we did. We started off on the same day, March 29th, and then we crisscrossed each other, and then hiked portions of Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and the last bit of New Hampshire, and all of Maine together. So, that's a topic for another day, because I'm talking to Kevin and Bruce here, but the whole family went and hiked the entirety of the trail. There were, well, not the whole family, but
7 of us.
7 of them, yeah, and that's a large group of various ages. The youngest was 10 when she started, and
9.
She was 9 when she started.
I think she was 9 when she started.
9, and she turned 10 on the trail.
She did.
Okay. So yeah, that's a big feat to get the whole family together, but that's a whole nother conversation. So we looked around. We found a lot of food sources when we were out there. We also watched Boggy Creek in this 100-plus-year-old farmhouse. How did you feel about that, Kevin? Because you weren't very open about it. You kind of were just telling me it was a movie. But how did you really? Were you creeped out or anything, or?
No, I wasn't too creeped out. I mean, like a little bit, just because like the music, but I found it slightly interesting. I didn't think it wasn't a movie that I'd watch twice though.
Right. It was
Even
just
though I
a
watched
movie,
it
yeah.
3 days later with the rest
Even
of
though
my
you watched
family.
it twice, yes. So you all saw it. Everyone in the family saw it. What did you think, Mr. Bruce, about the Boggy Creek? What kind of stock do you put in a story like that?
I don't know. It was interesting. One of my daughters is always scared about things that are at least a bit frightening, and she wanted to leave, but she ended up sitting all the way through it.
Oh, wow.
And it'd be, yeah, if they, they shot at it in the movie, and I'm assuming that's what happened. And be nice if they, had some more evidence. But being an engineer, I like to look for evidence, and it'd be nice if they had like blood samples or fur samples or carcass or something like that.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of those things
They
too.
certainly had a lot of witnesses.
Right. But I look at a small town like Falcon. I hear these farming folk, and they really put a lot of a trust in word of mouth, and they trust each other. And I think it's just not it's not always in the mindset of some of the rural citizens to want to collect a whole lot of evidence that proves, because they trust one another. And if Jimmy told Bob that he saw something, that Bob believed him, so it's a difficult situation because they believe each other. And that's one thing when I visited Falk, like there's this level of honesty and acceptance about everything that's strange that happens out there. But then you step outside the circle and the rest of society isn't as trustworthy, or doesn't have as much trust in one another. So it's kind of, you do observe a little bit more critical skepticism. People are they reject a lot more of what is said. And I guess it's good to have a mixture of both types of people in the world. The people that will trust you and the people that will ask those questions. But I definitely can kind of understand how at the time, when they were just figuring out there was a monster, they didn't think to go and grab the blood samples because, I'm sure they thought that any day, they'd be able to, they'd kill it or something, if it was much of a problem. But it's hard to kind of think what they might have been thinking. But I always found the movie interesting, and the fact that it's based off of these true accounts, it's a pretty telling narrative. So after we kind of toured the property, we did put some trail cameras out later that night after watching the movie, and I think
midnight, 1 o'clock.
Huh?
Midnight or 1 o'clock.
Yeah, I can't believe we were up that late, but it was hard to keep track of the time. So we put a couple of trail cameras out, and first we went down towards the creek, and I realized how easy it is to get lost back there. We didn't go too far back, but we kind of got turned around for a few minutes, and we had to be very cautious and kind of retrace our steps, and eventually we did get out. But Texas has got all of this thicket that just grows up, and you can't see, if you're on the edge of a field and you walk, 20 feet into the forest, you can't really see the field anymore, especially if it's dark, so it's kind of like everything is so thick there, and it's not very easy to find your bearings because it's all so flat. And I found that out, because I'm typically, if I go straight into the woods, in the hills of Tennessee, I can turn around and head towards a hill that I remember coming down from. And being completely flat, like I couldn't turn around and say which direction I came from. So we got turned around, and that was kind of scary. It was kind of scary, but we did make our way out and decided to put our trail cameras up in the freshly mowed field, and left them out for 5 days or so.
I think about 5 days. Yeah.
5 days, and we got some big old feral hogs on there. I got a little bit of video and still shots of that. So that was neat. That shows us that there's all types of fruits and vegetables, but a little bit of meat too for something that wanted to pursue it. Now, I don't have any slightest indication that Bigfoot lives on your property, But going to your property and seeing the diversity of animal life, you're telling me about stories of seeing coyotes and deer out there, and lots of other animals. Hogs, yeah, definitely. We saw that evidence firsthand after looking at the trail camera. And then you have the pecans, and you have the streams, which means there's fish and aquatic things like frogs and things like that, and that's perfect habitat. Whether or not a Bigfoot lives back there on that particular piece of land, I guess we'll never know. But that just that helps me understand that, hey, there are probably other farms like that in Texas and in the South and in Tennessee and Kentucky, and maybe not the same size, but you can find on these farm properties, the same type of biodiversity and ecologically rich habitat that you would find in national forests, state parks, places that are set aside and preserved, and where some of these reports come from. The difference is, how many visitors do you get to a national park, to a state park each year, versus how many visitors you get to, privatized property that's been in the family name for 200 years.
Yeah, we probably aren't out there, but maybe a couple of days a year. Well, probably less than a week a year, when you say.
Yeah,
right. Wow.
And we're just, and when we do go out there, we're hardly ever on the creek. So the place, when we walk out there, we surprise a lot of coyotes because they haven't seen humans before.
Yeah, it's a good hideaway for anything, any type of known animal. And there's got to be, the way I'm thinking is there's, if this part of Texas and, the Hillsborough or Fort Worth area is too far from the mountains to get the occasional wandering Bigfoot, maybe that one at the base of the Ouachitas or the base of, some mountain range in Oklahoma or something, maybe it's got a lot of the same characteristics of your property, but close enough for something to find its way there. So that's something I've really been interested in, is just how much private property is owned in the United States and how little of it is utilized and used or monitored. And I think that's probably a suitable habitat for these things if they do exist. They're probably spaced out, living in a lot of these areas that aren't accessible to the public. But so we've had a good little conversation. Do you guys want to close with any final thoughts about anything in particular, about how you feel about Bigfoot, or what kind of advice you'd give to someone that might find a Bigfoot on their property?
Well, I wish we could find one. We'd be famous.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I have any advice. I like land, and I like open spaces and woods and things. Of course, traveling the Appalachian Trail with you know that already, and like hiking, seeing all the different animals and things like that as we walk. Only the scariest thing I ever saw were the rattlesnakes.
Right. Yeah.
The bears weren't too bad.
Kevin, you want to say anything to wrap it up?
Yeah, we sure did get lost that night. I mean, we just went in, and it seemed like we just maybe went 50 feet, and we were just turned around for probably a good 5 minutes or so. I think one thing that we could have done to kind of prevent that was, just better flashlights and better lighting.
Yeah. We kind of went in there, we kind of shotgunned it. We didn't go in with very good flashlights or anything like that, and they did have an unlimited source of light. They were crank charged, but yeah, that was still, they didn't get bright enough. You really need a spotlight to kind of see more than a few feet in that thicket. Which that makes me think of, something could have been, not far away. We could have been like, 10 feet from startling a herd of hogs or something, and not known it.
Yeah.
Because it's just, wow, yeah, it's wild out there. There's a lot of places that, are still wild. And, you can sit and think about that for quite some time, and what might be out there that we don't know about, what is out there that we do know about, and even then, there's still a lot of mystery behind every little aspect of these wide open spaces. But I enjoyed sitting down and talking to you, over not only just over this little 20-minute interview, but but throughout the week, learning bits about your property in Texas and some of the historical aspects of it, and I really enjoyed spending time with you guys, and I hope that we can do something like this in the near future.
We enjoyed visiting with you, and we certainly enjoyed hiking the Appalachian Trail with you. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's good to see you again.
And on that note, I think we'll wrap up and move on. All right, thank you guys.